This episode of That Podcast in Hutch is brought to you by me. If you'd like to learn about how you can sponsor future episodes of That Podcast in Hutch, please reach out to me at thatguyandhutch@gmail.com or through my social media channels, which are also That Guy in Hutch. Thank you. Hey everyone, it's That Guy in Hutch, Jason Probst, and you're listening to That Podcast in Hutch. In this episode, we had artist Brady Scott on, but we did something a little bit unusual this time. We decided to have a live audience recording. We've done a couple of things where Chris is here with me today, and we've gone out and we've done this before, but never where we had an audience of people watching us record the entire episode.
Yeah, we've done our recordings at Third Thursdays on the street, and those have been interesting and a lot of fun. But this was a whole different experience. We went to the library. We were in the big meeting room in the library, and we invited audience members. Anyone in the community could come. And so we had an actual audience listening to us record the podcast for the first time.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And I was worried throughout whether we'd make mistakes or whether there'd be a lot of pauses, or sometimes we have to, do a second take or reframe a question, or a train comes by, any number of things. But I thought it all went off pretty well.
Yeah, I think it went off really smoothly as far as, for our first live recording, I thought things went great.
Yeah, I too. I really appreciated that the audience members at the end, almost all of them had questions. Yeah. So many of them, right?
Yes, we had so many audience member questions. We ended up having 14 of our 15 audience members ask questions.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. They were very engaged. And I think we would have had more people, except it was like 0 degrees that day.
Yes, we recorded this the day after the snowstorm. It was 0 degrees outside. The library was nice and warm, but I don't blame people for not getting out and traveling that day. But I'd say I look forward to us in the future doing this again.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good enough experience for me, and I was convinced that despite the weather, we had a good enough audience that I'm willing to do it again. And I think it'll be a real fun experience. We're going to try some different ideas in the future, so look forward to that. But on this episode, Brady will talk a lot about, like Chris mentioned, his process of painting, talk about the murals that he's worked on, talks about the travels that he's made all over the country to learn more about street art. And so you've seen his murals around town. You can't live here and not see them. But if you live anywhere in Kansas, it's pretty likely you've seen some of his work as well. So I'm excited to offer this episode out, put it out to everyone. But thanks for sharing in this experiment with us.
And also, if you are interested in more of Brady's work, he has a show opening in Wichita, I believe the day after this episode goes live. Is that
That's
correct?
Right. That's right. He has. Okay. It's over at City Arts in Wichita, and they have an artist reception on. This is going to air on Thursday the 6th. And the artist reception will be on Friday the 7th. So his show will run all month long through March, but they'll have a big reception on Friday. I hope you'll enjoy this episode with Brady Scott. Hey everyone, this is That Guy in Hutch, Jason Probst, and you're listening to That Podcast in Hutch. And we're doing today something we've never done before. We're doing a live broadcast from the Hutchinson Public Library. We're recording in front of an audience. It's cold, so it's not a huge audience, but we have a good number of people who braved the cold. I think it was maybe 10 degrees when you came in, and it'll probably be 0 when you leave. But thanks for coming out tonight. And I'm excited because I have for my guest this week, Brady Scott. And even if you don't know Brady personally, you definitely have seen Brady's work around town or around the state. He's probably best known for the number of murals he's painted around town. And I was thinking about doing this episode live with an audience and what we could do that would be a good visual component to go along with the audio, and so we have a bunch of Brady's work playing kind of on a loop behind us. But I thought that would be a good idea. So Brady, thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we you and I visited a little bit beforehand, and I want to do this at the top and at the bottom. But one of the reasons we wanted to talk about your art was also to talk about you have a show coming up, and I want to make sure we get to that right off the top.
Yeah, I have a show in Wichita at the Wichita City Arts Gallery there in Old Town. It's called Haunted Landscapes, and it's just a bunch of paintings that I did and done, in between murals and tattooing. I've really worked pretty hard on creating a newer body of work. There's some older pieces in it too. There's a little bit of wildlife stuff, which I'm kind of known for, but quite a few landscapes. I tried to kind of like infuse them a little bit different than just the regular landscape. I don't know, just kind of imaginative. I don't want to say fantasy really, because all these things could technically exist, but they don't really exist anywhere but in my imagination and in the paintings. So.
Yeah, and that runs all through March, and there's a kickoff on March 7th.
Yes,
right?
March 7th, 5 to 9 or 6 to 8 or sometime in the evening. There will be a artist opening reception there, and then it'll go until I think mid-April.
Okay.
And they're open in business hours and probably on the weekends as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So make sure we'll touch that again at the end of the show, but I'll make sure that everyone knows they can go catch that and see some new work from Brady over there. One of the things I kind of wanted to go through your history, and I'm always curious about at what point, like when you're a kid, and you talked to me a little bit, you didn't grow up here, right?
Well, kind of in between. I was born in Arizona on a ranch there, family-owned ranch that had been in the family since the 1800s. From what I can remember, there's an old painting of them coming over on covered wagons and starting like the first ranch there. My dad and all his brothers grew up doing that, but then my mom and him separated, and we moved kind of all around Arizona and then to Kansas to try and start a ranch because my stepdad had family that had been ranchers out in Greenwood County. I don't know if you guys know the Eureka, Piedmont area, but it's known for the Cattleman's Hill and the grasslands and everything. So we tried to start a ranch out there, but didn't work out. And this was, mid '90s when we moved there. I was about in the 4th grade, but yeah, I just kind of grew up, running around the hills out in that area, rural Kansas. And I'd go back and visit Arizona as well. My grandparents lived there, and a lot of my family still lived in Arizona. So we kind of back and forth. You mentioned that a lot of your artwork has the wildlife in it. Did that kind of influence it? Growing up I don't know. Like I grew up in like the time before the internet, so it's like you had to have pictures to draw from. And obviously, I drew from my head too, but we didn't have very much TV. So there's magazines. I don't know. You guys all remember magazines, but kids these days are like, what the heck? You'd have a magazine and cherish that thing. We had a skateboard mag. I had one skateboard magazine my entire life, and we had it for like years. And you'd flip through it and keep it. And so I drew a lot from like wildlife, Field and Stream, Arizona Highway magazines, lots of like just Western art books and stuff like that, which I love that kind of art. But I can remember like the first time I saw Loretta Art magazine, which is it's like a car enthusiast kind of Chicano style artwork stuff from California. My friend Shannon Darnold had one, and I was just blown away by that. I can remember the first time I saw a tattoo magazine, and I was blown away by the tattoo art. So then I would draw from those as well.
So when did you start drawing? When did you start to want to draw when you were a kid?
I can't remember. I remember winning a coloring book contest when I was still in Kingman, Golden Valley, Arizona, and I had to have been 3 or 4, and I won an ice cream cone. And I remember like going down and it was weird. That was the weirdest ice cream. It had like gum in it. It was called Superman ice cream, and it had gum in it too. So it was like terrible to eat. I remember, but of course, if I looked at it now, the coloring probably would have been terrible. But it was like one of those, just a coloring contest.
Yeah.
But I've been drawing, painting ever since then. It was something to do, when you didn't have anything else to do, and it was relatively inexpensive to draw. And I painted and stuff too, but mostly I just drew as a kid a lot. Drawing class to make friends, and when you're sad you can draw, when you're bored you can draw. It was just my hobby that I did. I was terrible at sports, so that's what I did. So that's
kind of your outlet that you found to kind of like just fill time, feel productive.
I don't know. I've just always been obsessed with it. Like it's just been. Obviously you get encouraged along the way, but then there's been times when you just do it just to do it. It's almost like almost like breathing now. It's just something I've always done and just kept doing even through, I went to school for commercial art, and I did that for a while, but I still like to draw on the side. And I do a lot of digital stuff, but there's something about just the old mediums of, charcoal and paper, and there's something about just canvas and paint, and it's just really hard. But, you adjust a little bit and you change a little bit, and then you can see your growth, and I don't know, you just kind of get obsessed with it. And I just have ideas too, so that's kind of a way to get those ideas out.
Ideas out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that, like the idea generation part. I do more writing and things like that, so I have ideas and then I think about how to write them. But I'm curious how somebody who works in a visual medium, how you just visualize something, and then how do you go about the process of pulling that out of your brain?
Well, I started at a young age. I had some really good art instructors that taught you how to do like little sketches and thumbnails and things like that. And I do a lot of that as well. And then now I do a lot of like photo manipulation and putting together different photos to make a reference to draw from and paint from. I don't know. You just kind of get like an idea of something, and that idea kind of leads to another idea, which leads to another idea. So like, and you just keep kind of following them, and then you do like one or two pieces and you're kind of bored with that, but then you have another idea that leads to something else, and it just kind of builds on itself if you keep doing it and keep pursuing it.
Yeah. Was there you went to school for commercial art. Was there, what point did you, at some point you said, I want to do this. This is what I want to do for a career?
I've always kind of wanted to do it as a career, like as a solo artist. But even just selling paintings in Kansas is like impossible to make just money off of that. So you have to have a bunch of multiple incomes. So I did graphic design for years. 14 and a half years at Luminous Neon here in town. I did sign design. But then I was always drawing and painting on the side. I picked up airbrushing. I did a lot of automotive airbrushing. I got tired of doing skulls and flags, which I love skulls and flags, but it's just, that's what was the market around here. And I just didn't want to do any of that anymore. And a lot of guys around here, they want their cars to look like they did in high school in the 60s or the 50s. They want like a they want it to run. I can't remember the name of it. They want it to run well, but they don't really want it custom. Like if you go out west, there's like, lowrider murals on the whole side of it, and everything's like, there's just way more custom. Here, everything they want it kind of stock or to look stock. So there just wasn't as much of a need for it. So I started doing murals. I just got asked to do one. I got asked to do a tailgate, and that's why I picked up airbrushing, and then that just kind of led to other things. I did that for several years, and then I got asked to do a mural, so I did that, and then I just kind of followed that and just started doing that. So for years I was doing murals on the side, and I had my day job as at Luminous Neon doing graphic design, and I even did like odd jobs on the side too. Like I cleaned Alcoa for a while. I worked at gas stations sometimes, and then in 2022 I came across the opportunity to become a tattoo artist, which it's such an industry now. It's such a sought after thing. And I had wanted to for a long time, but I really wanted to do it right. And like the state of Kansas is the hardest state to get a license in. You have to do like so many hours under another artist, and there's only so many of those artists willing to take you under their wing. Like it's a master apprentice program, and you have to have a license to do all that stuff. And there's only so many guys that are, you basically become their competition. And 9 times out of 10, there's some big breakup thing that happens with your mentor and blah, blah, blah in the industry. I don't know if you know much about tattooing, but it's kind of a, I don't know, it's just very dramatic. There's a lot of egos in it. But it just opened up a lot to me. So then I was immediately able to, I had a really good mural job in Salina, which I don't know if you guys have been to Salina, but they're booming with their public art programs are great. And they started all that like 10 years ago, but they've really invested in the way their city looks and feels, which has made it, it's a really nice place to go visit and live. I don't know if you've checked out housing there. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's growing. It's got a lot, and they've invested in their downtown.
Right.
A lot
they really
too.
have, yeah. Not only the way it looks, but the way it flows. And they've put a lot of thought into it. But I had a really big project that let me, sort of gave me some financial backing for a little while so I could pursue tattooing. And then from then on, I ended up retiring as a graphic designer, and now I'm just full-time painting murals and tattoos, and hopefully selling some art at some art galleries. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. What was the first mural you did?
Oh man, years ago, I started one in high school for a friend of mine's dad, and I never finished it. And I've actually tattooed him, and he's actually passed away since then. Rest in peace. But he just sort of helped me kind of get started. I never finished it. I felt really bad about it until I sort of reconnected with him. But that was technically the first one. I did one in Eureka, Kansas years ago with airbrush equipment. At the Ye Old Mill was a mural that I did. It was all airbrush equipment. And then in 2014, it's sort of the same time period. Julie Black and Jocelyn Woodson and I got together and did one. It's like Avenue D and Main Street. I don't know if you guys seen it. Ace Hardware donated all the paint, and we got like all their oops buckets, like the mix match colors and stuff. And we did our best. Everybody really loves it. I want to paint over it every time I see it. I'm like, look at that trash. But everybody seems to enjoy it. And it's funny that there's like a little abandoned church in it. And now I'm still doing like abandoned churches and houses and things like that. And, we grew up down the street from one it wasn't abandoned, but it used to be a one-room schoolhouse, and we would walk, and it was like, I say street, it was a gravel road, and we would walk, and the old ladies would still have like ice cream socials there, and then they would talk about when they went to school there, and then some crazy like arson people burn it down. There was like we lived maybe 15, 20 minutes outside of town in between Eureka and Piedmont, Kansas.
Okay.
And there was like a rash of arson, and somebody burned it down. And so I know some old farmers out there got their houses burned down. It was pretty crazy.
Wow.
I think they ended up catching the guys. But that was what was that called? It was like the Fairview, and it was like a 4-H building too. And there used to be like a carousel on it. My sister and I, that was the only park in miles.
Yeah.
So we would walk down there and do the little old carousel thing.
The death trap carousels?
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. And I remember one time my brother mowed the lawn there, and my sister took her glasses off and set them down, and he ran them over with the lawnmower, and it was like this big, we still talk about it like Christmas. Like they were so mad about it. Because, back then a pair of glasses were really expensive. And
then that church ended up that kind of
all those
inspired.
little, it just sort of inspired that, and I still do. I did a series of these like moths and bugs and cicadas with abandoned houses and things inside of them. There's something cool about it. I don't know if there's something about that boom, that turn of the century boom, where Kansas was like everybody was flocking here, and then the war happened, and then everybody was like, this sucks. So let's go to California. And they left all these houses here, and all this industry, all the industry left. Like there used to be, like, when you go to Climax, Kansas, there's like big, huge, like this building where they made bricks and like concrete. Even like the old paper mill, the one that just closed not too long ago. Like all these abandoned buildings that just they cost more to tear down than they do. So people just leave them, and they're just kind of scattered across the Midwest. I don't notice them as much in Arizona. I don't know why, but it's something that seems very regional to me, and it's just cool to paint them, and they look kind of spooky and mysterious.
Yeah, and some of those are making an appearance in your show, right? Like some things like that.
A lot of those. I was gonna do more canvases of them, but I ended up painting more of them outside. They were just more fun, and they seemed to be better that way. There's one near that first mural at D and Maple. It's called like Visionaries. Eye care right now. It's kind of tucked in the back, but I painted one here in town.
Yeah. I was going to ask you a little bit. When we talked, Brady and I kind of had like a pre-interview where we kind of went through some things, and I talked about, like, I remember years ago, you'd have your van, you had your old family van with your Brady Creative on it.
Yeah, I painted that sucker many times, and I had Anthony help me cut some rust out of it. It was back like 6 months later. That thing was so rusted out. But yeah, I ended up trading it in a few months ago, and somebody told me they saw it in a salvage yard. They're like, "Hey, that's your van," because everybody recognized it. I would get either people loved it or hated it, because I would get people that would just like give me like dirty looks because it was like, and my wife hated it too. She's like, "It's so ugly. I don't want to see it in that thing." But I loved it. I was like, whatever. It was just fun. I painted it like 6 different times, different themes, and I actually even had plans to paint it again, but I was like, I needed something different. So,
well, talk about. I mean, you have a family, and you talked about some of the things you did, and you had a job. How did you manage to keep like the fire for your dream and your passion going while you're trying to just like grind out a living. Like that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I think we have a lot of stories where people just kind of fall into the grind and they just let the dream slide.
Right.
How did you kind of manage that over
I don't
that
know.
period of time?
I've always, I told my kids I didn't want to give up on my dream, so I would take them with me painting, and they'd help out on little projects. My daughter Zoe, she goes by Jade now. She's 22 now, but she could go paint a mural, by herself if she wanted to. She doesn't want to because it's Dad's thing. It's not what she does, but she knows how to do it from helping me so much. And just being there by my side. And I didn't want to just give up and show them, you just give up and once you have kids, your life's over, that old story. And just obsessed, crazy. I don't know. It's just something I've always done. And then finding ways to make money at it. I don't know if that's also a skill, like the business side of it too. And I had a somewhat creative job, but I've just always had this sort of itch to make things and create stuff. And it just, I don't know, it just never really went away. It feels good to complete a project and have it there. And then you always kind of hate parts of it. So you're like, well, I'm going to do that one again, but a little bit better and a little bit different, and just keep carving away at it. And
then, so from all of that, you've done murals all over. I mean, you have a lot in town.
Across America, yeah.
But tell us about where all you've been. Like, I was surprised you told me you had painted in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm actually going back there in April to do a tattoo and oil painting seminar. But I don't know, it's just like this grapevine of street artists and graffiti artists that across America, and if you know one of them, they know somebody who knows somebody, usually in every city. Like, I went and painted in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Santa Fe, and Brooklyn, and New Jersey, and the one in Jersey was a huge thing that I didn't even realize it was, but it was like this, it's called Meeting of Styles, which started in Germany, but it's branched out across the world. It's just a huge art movement that it's really cool to do that. And it came from graffiti, but it sort of branched out into street art. And they kind of, I don't know, true graffiti writer guys kind of fight about it, and how street art kind of took over because it seems a little bit more acceptable. It's more of an acceptable art form for people. But it's still, to me, they're kind of the same thing. And even the one in Albuquerque, when I went there to paint, I just happened to be there on a weekend where this crew of writers, they're called the Zombies crew, and there was like 100 people across America, and they were just meeting, because it started in Albuquerque, meeting there to paint this, like, it's by a junkyard. It's called the Acme Wall, but it's this huge, like, mile-long fence, privacy fence for this salvage yard. And people just paint it and paint over it and paint it, and like year in and year out. So it's just fun, and it's relatively quick with spray paint. And I use a lot of acrylic bucket paint, like latex house paint too. You can do something in 4 or 5 hours and have a day of making art and hanging out with your buddies and, shooting the breeze, and have a picture of a piece that you did, and then, fly home or whatever. Yeah. So a lot of guys do it. A lot of people make quite a good living, like going and painting larger murals and then doing these little sort of fun projects on the side.
And aside from that, you've done some, like you talked about the project in Salina. What'd you paint in Salina? I actually had I curated with Salina, their arts council and another group in there. Brad Anderson runs that group, and we curated sort of the regional local artists came by to start doing murals in that town before they brought in a lot of bigger names, because they brought in some huge people from overseas and from bigger cities here in the U.S. that are really big names to paint, but they wanted to kind of have a local vibe as well, and they thought they would head off a lot of that. Well, why didn't you get a local artist to come paint, the thing? So they hired me to help, and I actually got people from around here and the Midwest, Texas and Colorado came through, and some artists from Wichita came through, and we painted this back alleyway that was just like this old rundown alleyway that they have a main street parking that everybody clogs up because they have a lot of things going on there and their main streets on Saturdays and stuff. So we were sort of spicing up this alleyway, this back alleyway, to where people can come back there and park. It's right by the Stiefel Theater, in between the Stiefel and where the Salina Symphony does their
like rehearsing at. And then alongside that project, while I was doing that project, Gustav Appelquist, I don't know if you know him, but he's in the Salinas Symphony, and his wife is a drummer in the Salinas Symphony, and they own the building that the Salinas Symphony does. So he hired me to paint like basically a mural for his wife, which is she loves sunflowers. So it's a bunch of sunflowers in my style there. It's big. It's like 100 foot by 20 feet, something like that.
Well, talk a little bit about the business of mural painting, because we talked a little bit about like how some people will. It feels like attitudes have changed a lot on what used to be considered graffiti or street art.
Right.
And now you had kind of indicated to me that it's almost considered like a good for business, like it can attract.
Oh, it's it's
traffic.
like a sign on steroids. Like I get a lot of, and it's actually easier to sell that than it is to sell paintings that go in your home. Like people, it's, I don't know. It's like the worth of it. People can see it more, and it's in your face, and there's quite a few of them that you drive by and you can't really ignore them. So, and people see the value of them. I get emails and calls all the time where people talk about how much they love it, and it makes their drive to work. Or you go into a community that's a lot of times where they do, like I did the Horizontes Festival in Wichita, and they were redoing this like the more Hispanic area, and they were redoing their market. So this Armando got a grant to kind of hire artists to come in and sort of spice up the area, because it's a way to sort of reinvent and revitalize the area relatively quickly. I mean, we did that in like a week, and it was completely different, as opposed to like construction and remodeling and groundskeeping and doing all of that. So expensive and so costly and time consuming. You can paint a mural and it's a completely different space in, a span of 5-6 days.
Yeah.
Sometimes even a day you can paint something, big and inspiring. And I don't know, it just revitalizes neighborhoods. And I think it really, it's just caught on everywhere, not just here. I mean, it's around the world. And
yeah, it really does feel like the attitudes about it have changed, that people have recognized that you can do this, and you don't have this like gunmetal gray wall that you're looking at all the time. Right. Yeah. One of the things. So the business of it, though. So you said that you do, like, people are seeing this kind of like as a sign for their business.
A lot of times, yeah, and I have to kind of push them away from the word sign, because we have sign codes, and most cities do have sign codes. And I worked in that industry for so long that I understand them. And anything with words and anything with logos, things like that, it becomes a sign, and then you run into sign code issues. And I really try to push everybody away from that, because one, like, logos are very dated, type styles, those kinds of things go in and out of style. Businesses sell, but if you have a piece that's just artwork, that's something more inspiring to different people. It's a universal language, one, like anybody can see it and feel something from it. And it still recognizes that building as a business, and then, people get out to take photos, and then they go around and usually go in the door and see what's going on in the business. I think people have recognized that. Yeah,
I like that, the idea that, like, it is a universal language, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. You see something, you feel something, it makes you think of something, no matter what language or what your experience is.
Hopefully. I mean, that's the goal. You want to keep, and that's why I try to usually push clients more towards an art-based thing that's more of a timeless idea. And you can still have some things that are some elements that harken back to their business, or, something that's like a subtle nod to their business, but not have to be like an in-your-face, or whatever, eat at Joe's or whatever.
Yeah. Tell me about the process of painting a mural. Like, you're taking an idea and you're transferring it to a huge canvas that requires you to be up and down ladders. And I always wonder, like, how do you scale that to make sure that it's, accurate to scale and proportions? How do you go about putting an idea that you have onto such a big canvas?
Yeah, well, usually I just meet with the customer and talk about what their goals are for it and what their business is, and then I sort of try to filter that through what I do, and I draw everything to scale on a photograph of the business. And then I have a couple different methods. I either use like a grid method. It's called a doodle grid, but it's basically just like the lines that when you're a kid you draw, like, inch squares on your picture of your sister or whatever, and then you draw the inch squares on the page, and then you can transfer it like that. It's basically that. Or I use a projector. And there's always a lot of freehand in there too, because sometimes you mix and match things and it doesn't work good. You have your iPad screen and you're drawing on the photo. It's different when it's 20, 100 feet long. So it's just figuring that out. And it's a little bit different on every one. And there's always challenges with like the wind and the weather and the surface and it's very challenging art form, but it's really rewarding too. But so I enjoy those challenges and I kind of jump at them. And I don't know, I have a lot of arts friends who always have like an excuse. So like it's cold or it's windy or it's this or that, and I just have really learned to like discipline myself to tell that little voice just to shut the heck up and
just go.
That's really what you have to do is just tell that, because you always have a reason not to do the thing.
Yeah.
And you just have to keep telling that little inner voice just to shut up and do the thing. And 9 times out of 10, like it works out. But then every once in a while it sucks because you're like, you go in there like, oh, I should have stayed home. But 9 times out of 10 it works out.
It would be too cold today.
Right, dude. It's so cold. I was trying to finish those paintings in my garage today with like a little space heater, and then I had my kitchen door open into my garage trying to get it just above freezing. Because it was like 22 in my garage. I was just like, oh my gosh.
It's so cold.
Yeah.
So cold. Have you ever had a surface that's just unworkable? I mean, you work on a variety of surfaces.
Right.
But I'm thinking like some can get real, like if the brick's not in good shape or the concrete's not in good shape.
Yeah, we got to prep. A lot of the old buildings, you prep them. There's something called pointing bricks where the mortar's just torn away, because that usually goes away but from wind and water erosion. So if it's like a historic thing and it's something we really want to be on there for a long time, then they'll hire masons to come in and prep that. Typically they would just power wash the surface, and then I prime everything with a paint and primer mix. I've had, mostly with clear coats is when I've had trouble with that. I had an anti-graffiti clear coat that's like a silicone that just like started coming off of this of these pieces, and then I had to scrape all of that off and redo it. That was a pain in the butt, but most of the time that part's not that big of a deal. You just have to make sure it's really, really clean so you get a good bond. But it's typically brick or concrete or stucco around here, and with my background in automotive airbrush, like anything metal, I just scuff it and prime it just like I would a car. Yeah.
You're doing tattooing now.
Yeah, man, I love it.
Talk about that a little bit, and you talked about the difficulty of that, but talk about like how that works as art.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing, and it's a whole other like form of learning and like not overworking the skin, and like working with a client. I just had a client the other day, and I didn't even think about it. I moved her arm, and she's like, "How? What are you doing?" And I forgot in my head that I'm on a person. And she's like, "What are you doing, dude?" I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I moved her arm a little too much or too fast or something, and she got upset. And I was like, So it's like working with that, and something else that I never thought I would enjoy about tattooing is like the people, because I'm not a people person. I was like, as a graphic designer, you're like, it's like screen and keyboard and you got your headphones on, and painting and drawing is such an internal thing. But tattooing's like, you get to like, it's like a salon. Like there's so much gossip, and then it's like I'm gossiping and we're all eavesdropping on the gossiping from the station next to me. And then like, it's just crazy, that part of it that I never thought I would enjoy, but now it's like one of my favorite things about it. But yeah, it's really hard because it's so easy to like overwork the skin, and it's so like everybody's skin is a little bit different.
What do you mean overwork the skin?
Well, what I do like full color tattooing. I've sort of developed a technique, and one of the reasons I'm going to New York is to learn a little bit more about this sort of painting on skin and using more of a painterly approach to tattooing, which is completely, there's a whole bunch of tattooers out there that are like, that'll never work. Oh, you got to use just black. But there's a whole bunch of other dudes and women as well who are doing it, and it looks great.
Yeah.
So it's like you're just learning. It's tattooing's more like illustration. But it's learning to kind of bring some of those more painterly things into tattooing, and you go over and over and over it a lot of times. An area you'll go over it a couple times, and there's a lady who does underpainting techniques for tattooing, which is wild to me. But it's just a way of building your colors up, which you do in oil painting and watercolor. but nobody's ever done it with tattooing. So it's like learning to do that. And
so on a
but
tattoo,
there's
layering.
a line there where it's like the skin is just won't take anymore.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I'll do like two sessions because I'll be like, I don't want to overwork this, but we need to pack a little bit more color in here, or we need to darken this up, or let's see how it heals and then come back and do it again. Because if you do it too much, it'll just scab and fall out.
Yeah, and it won't be any good. How do you have people that come to you and say, I have this idea, and then it's up to you to try to take their idea and convert that into something, and that they see what you're thinking and think, okay, that's exactly what I had in my mind?
Yeah, I mean, every day. That's basically
the job,
tattooing.
right?
Yeah. I do have a lot of designs that are just, hey, I want to, and I have some awesome clients that are really great that I can like, hey, can we do this design? And they love it automatically. But oftentimes it's somebody coming in with their idea that they've got usually off of Pinterest or whatever, or just something they've seen, and just trying to steer them in a way that it's like, well, that looks cool, but it's not going to work and heal well as a tattoo. It looks great on your screen, but that's not going to you want it to live with them forever. You want it to look good 10, 20 years from now, which is a whole other part of it. But yeah, it's just a challenge, man, but I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that, I can tell you love it. Do you find that it's like, this is like the perfect combination of like I guess it's art, and it's art on people, and it feels like that's the perfect career for someone like you.
Yeah, but I like it too because it helps me sustain a living and not have to worry about money. Yeah. So I can work on my other things too that aren't quite as productive, like painting this whole body of work that may or may not sell.
Yeah.
Like I was frustrated the other night. We're trying to price this work, and I'm online like looking like how do people price stuff here, because I've sold pieces before, but I'm trying to come up with a formula, because if I do my murals by the square foot, and I was talking to my wife, and we were just like trying to find, and you get to where you're like, it's only $1 a square inch, but this piece is huge, so I'm selling it for $5,000, $10,000. It's never going to sell for that in this area. So I'm trying to find just frustrated with trying to figure out, not undercut yourself, but not price it out of the water to where nobody's going to be able to afford it around here.
And it's probably, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing I think this is an interesting thing for creative work, artist types. It's hard to figure out pricing on your product.
It's ridiculously hard, yeah.
Because you can't go to like a bank and say, what's the multiple on a piece of art?
Right.
I can go to any banker and say, I want to buy this business, and they can look it up and say the multiple on this is whatever, 3 years gross earnings, right?
Right.
And you buy it.
Well, there's no formula for it anymore because it's been out of education for so long. It's been this frivolous thing that nobody cares about, but so many people love it.
Yeah.
And it has a value that's there, but it's really hard to quantify when you don't have any way of even thinking about quantifying it. So half of that is like educating people, and people that already know, and it's something that's like, it's not something you can talk about because it's not words. It's an image that, like we said, it's beyond culture. It's beyond, people can feel it no matter what. And you can't really put that into words. Like, I'm not a writer, so I don't write. I paint the pictures. So it's hard to put that into words. And people that are, like accountants and that sort of business stuff is a very like word-centric, it's just a different way of thinking. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to like quantify those things and put the value on something like that.
Yeah, but the thing I always think about when we talk about art, and we have that, there's always a group of people in any community that thinks, oh, why are we spending money on this? Or in school, why are we spending money on art education programs? But I always wonder, like, the inverse of that is, what does the world look like without it?
Right.
I don't know that we ever consider the cost of that.
Yeah. It looks like a gray building with nothing on it. It's square.
It's lifeless and dull, and I think we don't consider that as much.
A lot of people are having that conversation around street art. Is like, we're tired of seeing these like targets, and there's no architecture. There's no anything. You see a cathedral from the 1800s or the 1500s. You're like, oh my God, it's an amazing work of art. But you see a Walmart or whatever, and it's just like, it's nothing. There's no feeling there.
Yeah.
And it didn't cost much to put up, and it's really cost effective, but there's no soul to it. So it's just like,
that's the word.
Yeah. How do you
soul.
quantify soul?
Yeah,
like it's a really hard thing to even put into words. It's hard to talk about. So it's it's hard to sell something like that. But
And I think one of the things I like about having so many murals in Hutch.
Yeah.
And how many did you say you thought we had when we
I counted them last time I counted, it was like 30.
Of your murals?
Yeah.
Or,
Like myself, like probably 15 of those are my own. And then every year I try to do a big graffiti project with friends of mine that do graffiti. And it's kind of like a big tax write-off. I don't make a lot of money off of those murals, but it's also, a big sign for my business too. Yeah. And it's just a fun thing to do. And then I typically get, while we're doing those, a business that drives by and goes, hey, I got this, car sale thing, or I've got, last year it was the WebCon, the guy that does WebCon roofing, I think. And I just painted one for him this year. And based off, and he just drove up while I was painting and hey, can I have one of those? So it's like it's very good to keep, just keep doing. Plus I'm learning too every time I do, and I try to do different techniques, and I feel blessed to be in this community where I could find people that would let me paint on their buildings, and not only that, but then eventually people that would pay me to paint on their buildings.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like it really adds, it's a flavor, right? It adds soul and it adds flavor to a community.
Yeah, it wasn't intended for that. I was just obsessed with learning to do this thing, and then it just grew, and I kept doing it. So, and people liked it. Then people bought them, so I just kept doing it. So, yeah.
You've done a lot. So you've done here, you have a lot. You have some in Salina. You did in Winfield. Is that right?
Winfield, Wichita, Kansas City, Tulsa, Oklahoma City. Did a bunch in Tulsa. They had a big Route 66 thing a few years ago. They were revitalizing that. It's just finding grants and things like that. And I sign up for quite a few of them. I did one for the Denver airport, it was just like I don't know what you call it, like a call for art thing. And I didn't end up not getting it, but I sign up for a lot of those. Yeah. Just you never know if you never sign up.
Just try, right? Yeah. Just keep going at it. I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of what I guess the investment in art education and the investment in art in a community. A little more from you on what that means, or I guess what you'd like to see happen in schools. I know some of these programs we've kind of pushed we've diminished their value as far as we focus on testing and things like that, and some of the things like art get lost in the shuffle on that. Well, you said that you had some art teachers that really influenced you and encouraged
Robin
you.
Himes was my art instructor in high school, and she was great, and we learned all kinds of different mediums. I ended up going back and painting a mural there, and she came by and talked to me, and she just really encouraged us. And it was like, it's sad now because I have kids that are in the school system, and the arts, it's just not there. So, and I know there's still going to be people that do it that are just as crazy and obsessed with it that'll learn. There's information out there. You can learn anything from YouTube. But there's just something about it that just feels wrong to me as an artist, to be just completely disregarding the value of it, especially as a child. That's when you want to have, you want those things, and you want to carry that into adulthood. So you carry the value in imagination, and the value in the idea of spending time doing something that makes you feel good, like art can or music can. That's not necessarily to turn a dollar. It's just because it feels good to do it.
Yeah.
And teaching kids that that's okay too is a good thing. To me, it seems like a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's just something that we just don't see as much. And I think everybody can agree that we don't see it as much.
Yeah.
It's just something I've noticed, and I don't have any idea how to fix that or whatever. It's just something that I've seen.
Are there places that you think do it right, like communities that you've been in, that you talk about the big event down in New Mexico?
That was all graffiti guys. Those are guys that are doing a lot of that stuff illegally, and they've just created this sort of culture outside. It's like a subculture outside of everything, and it happens to do with art too. A lot of that style writing, and they argue that anything with characters and stuff isn't really graffiti, but to me it's all the same thing. But yeah, there's just a culture of it outside of it that it's still there because people still find value in doing it. Yeah. It's still fulfilling for people to do, even though society or your teacher or somebody tells you that it's not. You're still doing it, and you're still having fun and find fulfillment in it.
Yeah, I think to me, what we do is we have a lot of social messages that tell kids that creativity and art and creating things from their mind is not as valuable as producing a product, right, and it actually is more in some ways.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was intentional or it's just become this thing that we've just all accepted and move on, and you've got your busy life and there's no way. I don't know how you would fix that other than just on a local level. I encourage my kids to do what they like to do, and some of them like to, they find fulfillment in drawing, and then some of my kids, she found it in dance, and my daughter now does nails, and it's like her creative outlet is doing nails, and just anything like that makes you feel satisfied, I guess.
I was going to ask you if your kids are artists or
my oldest daughter she does really good at like watercolor illustrations and things like that. She's not sure she wants to turn it into a career because she's seen how hard that is, but she kind of has. And then I've got the spectrum, like I said, dance, and my son loves like automotive stuff. He finds he's very like mechanical minded. He's created that kind of thing, which is that's a whole other kind of creativity in itself.
Yeah, to being able to visualize those things
and
in
just
your mind,
like and he does stuff with that. It's just like, to me, it's like magic to me.
Yeah. What would you say to some, like a young artist starting out who's like where you were 20 years ago?
Right.
I guess what would you tell them if they wanted to end up kind of where you are now and they're working on the front end of starting this dream?
Just keep going. And watch out for addiction, because it can really get at you. Especially, I know a ton of artists of mine that just they don't do it anymore, and they just got into partying too much. Yeah. And I can't tell you an artist friend of mine who hasn't kind of been through that. So watch out for addiction and just keep going, just keep drawing and keep painting and keep doing whatever the thing is. Keep making music or keep doing whatever the thing is that you like doing.
Yeah. The addiction thing, what do you think that is?
I don't know, man, but it's and I've dealt with it myself, and I've had friends that are still going through it, and some of them never get through it. And you see, I can think of one in particular, is an artist in Wichita, and it's just sad because he has so much potential, but just losing it in whatever it is, drugs, alcohol, or whatever the thing is that they're addicted to. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be like an artist. And I don't know, it's just because creative people in general, like the rock star thing, like they're creative people that, everybody, they're a rock star. They whatever. What is like the 27 Club where the guys that they just like Hendrix and Joplin and all that. Is there something about being creative that leads to that? I don't know what it is, but I've seen it a lot. And if I was to go back to myself 20 years ago, I would be so much further ahead if you focus on the things that are good for you and that are, if you focus on the things that you're pursuing this goal, but you have to have all these actions that reach to that goal. And if you're doing a bunch of actions and stuff, it doesn't matter what your intent is. If your actions don't go towards that intent, then you can do, you work for years kind of in circles. Yeah. It doesn't really, you never reach your goals.
It's really, I think that's a thing too, right? It's always important to like make sure that if you have a goal, all the things you're doing are aligned with.
And maybe not everything, but like you got to do 90% of everything, especially nowadays, because you're so busy doing all these other things that are distracting you. Like you have to, I don't know, just keep at it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I'm going to open it up to the audience a little bit.
Okay.
And I hope you guys have some questions. And Chris has a microphone he'll hand around. Just fair warning, this will be part of the podcast, so it won't get edited out. But please ask a question so that we can prove to people there are people here. If you want to say your name, say your name. If you don't.
We don't need to say my name. I just wanted you to talk about the show coming up again. Dates and times and where we can go to see your art on display in Wichita.
Yeah, Julie, thank you.
Busted.
It is in Wichita and Old Town at City Arts. It'll be up the entire month of March and a little bit of April, but the opening reception is March 7th from 5 to 8.
Yeah, I just wanted to, there's a lot of questions I want to ask you, but I do remember more than a few years ago, there was quite a dust up in LA about graffiti. Graffiti was all over the place in LA, and of course it was destroyed by people who didn't think it was appropriate to have in town, and so they spray over it and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that developed into, as you recounted in your experience in Brooklyn, it was recognized as soon as art galleries and people who are influential in the art world started speaking up about it. It became more accepted. It became what was later labeled as true art. And of course it took off from there. And my dad worked for the railroad. And one of the things
nice.
I noticed about the railroad was the art on the cars.
Yeah, there's a whole subculture of that too. Yeah, it's like a subculture of graffiti.
So have you done a boxcar yet?
I don't know.
And then, of course,
Plead the fifth.
One of the things that caught my eye, of course, being a Tolkien nut, was soon after the Tolkien movies came out, Peter Jackson's Tolkien's movies came out, New Zealand's airlines started painting their airliners
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. With characters and scenes from Middle Earth. And I don't know if that's still a thing, although just looking at airliners today, there is a certain style and significance to the way they're colored or even made.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Do you want?
it's just worldwide. I mean, it's all over the place. I have an interest in Asian and also Middle Eastern art.
Do you paint at all or draw?
No. My experience in art is a semester in college of art history, and so I'm at least not out of the loop in it. But no, I don't have any talent beyond simple stick figures and doodles.
Do you want?
But anyway,
Hey-
what's your idea of the future in the art world today?
Oh man, I have no idea. There's no way I can comment on that. I just focus on myself and my little world and
Well,
hope for the best.
what your focus is doing is starting to blossom.
Oh, thanks.
And are you familiar with Banksy?
Yeah.
I haven't heard. We haven't seen anything from him lately, and I just wondered if
Yeah, he did one a couple weeks ago,
inside
actually.
information?
Yeah. He did a piece a couple weeks ago, kind of commenting on the current situations.
I think Haley had a question. Haley, right here. Or Lacey.
I'm always kind of interested in the artist's signature, and so I'm wondering if for you that was something that evolved over time, or if you just always kind of knew that's how you wanted to represent your paintings with your name.
What was the first part?
The artist, like your signature.
Oh, yeah. I had an art teacher named Joyce in the 4th grade who said, you got to sign everything, Brady. Sign everything. That doesn't matter what it is, sign it. So from then on, I've just in my head, I've said that. And then it's kind of changed over the years. There was a time when I kind of just drew different versions of it. And then it's kind of a little bit different every time, but I could just have my kind of it's almost like a tag now through kind of learning graffiti and stuff. It's turned into kind of a tag. But I want it to be kind of readable too. There was one time when it wasn't very readable and everybody thought it was something, people would say it differently, like Grady or whatever. So I changed it from that.
So I'm curious because I know you touched on like blending photographs together and stuff to get inspiration to create what you're working on. What sort of other artistic disciplines or tools do you think have really benefited you or would benefit somebody else to working on like murals and other paintings and tattoos and stuff? Because as an artist myself, I do a variety of different things, and
Right.
I start to notice the overlap or like possible applications of overlap between all these different mediums. And it's not something that I like really hear people talking about.
I don't know, man. Like, there's no school that you can go to learn how to paint a mural or to do these things. So I've just sort of developed my own way of doing it. And I can't see it being that different from how people have done it for centuries. Like, it's paint on a wall. Like, so I mean, obviously spray paint's a little bit different, but I mean, the airbrush has been around forever. So it's very similar to that. And like you said, there's a lot of overlap. Like I've noticed if I'm working hard on doing my paintings and my tattoos get better, and then I use things from that in murals, and then, you know, like vice versa. You just keep working and keep going at it.
I'm going to ask a hard question. Of your public artwork in Hutchinson, what is your favorite piece?
Oh, shoot, I don't know. I always say it's the next one, the one I'm working on that I've sort of got ideas for.
Can we run through some of the murals that you've done in Hutch? Well, like we have the fairgrounds, we have the one behind the dance school.
Right. Those were some of the first ones that I did. There's one in the basement of the hospital I don't know people know about that I did sort of during COVID. And it's like a 300-foot timeline mural with a lot of history of Hutchinson and history from around the world, American history in it. And a lot of there's a lot of work, the stuff that the hospital wanted written in there. There's a walking tunnel down there. It's like a quarter mile, I think. But then COVID happened and nobody could go down there, and it was like this mess. So I'm not sure it's open now for people to go down there. I know a lot of the staff love it. I hid little sevens because there's 7 people in my family, so I hid these little sevens in, and people love going down there and looking for them. That one's a good one that I can remember. There's a couple that I've done that aren't there anymore. That I know there was a supplement shop that I did one on. There used to be like a vape hookah store that I did one on, and then and then there was a couple years there where I did Christmas murals every year, sort of down Main Street, and those, they only lasted a couple months.
And then there's Sandhills. I love the one at Sandhills.
Yeah, that was a fun one. We might be doing some more there too.
I wanted to know, is graffiti art and wall art the same, except one is a contracted piece and the other one is like just an expression of?
It really just depends on who you talk to. If you talk to like old graffiti writers, like only graffiti is supposed to be illegal and it's supposed to be letters only, it's like style writing. But they harken back to the guys who did it from the beginning on subways in New York, and they all did characters and letters together. So to me, it's the same thing. But it really just depends on who you talk to, yeah. But technically, street art is like paintings of things on walls, like murals. And graffiti is like lettering pieces. They're like obsessed. They have their name, and they're obsessed with writing it in different areas.
But it has also kind of become more intricate and expressionable.
Right. It's actually almost devolving now. Now it's just tags. If you go to Brooklyn, it's just tags that are like really fast, and they call it bombing, where they just put up as many as they can. And to me, it just looks like junk, but they enjoy it. It's more of quality or quantity over quality instead of the other way around.
Hi, Brady. My name's Jim. We've crossed paths a few times. But I think I saw that you were you involved with Boom Salina?
I'm sort of with them. We were on a different committee, but it's such a small community that they work together. I was with the Arts Council, and the Boom Committee is a different thing, but they work together quite a bit.
I just want to say, I've gone up and seen a couple of years with that Boom Salina. It's an incredible event, and it really is impressive.
It's really cool, and they had like some big names, like Martha Cooper is like a huge name in graffiti and street art culture, and she comes every year and takes photographs, and like it was just wild meeting her because she's like, you see her in history books and stuff like that, and
of course there's also the grain elevator in Salina.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to look at that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, Guido did that. He's from Australia, and he's trying to paint one in every state, and I think he's close. He's painted a ton in Australia.
Wow.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, I remember a few years ago you came to Arts Council and talked about the different nozzles on spray cans.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and just kind of give people an idea of just how those, when you do different things to get the different, spray, how that kind of works and what the differences are.
There's people that kind of go, you talk to people on the internet, they go into crazy detail of that stuff. And I really only use 3 different caps. And I have like a really big one that's called Ultra Fat. And then I have a New York Fat cap, which is a classic, like probably about this big of a pattern. And then I used Universal Thin caps. And then lately I painted with some guys from ATT Crew this summer in South Dakota, and they showed me how to make a stencil cap, which is like a way of basically making this homemade thing that fits on it to get even thinner line. They're a mess. They get paint everywhere, but I've been using those a little bit as well. But I only use those 3 caps, but there's all kinds of different caps out there. In 1994, 2 graffiti writers in Spain made the first like low pressure for graffiti paint. And then that has just boomed into a whole other industry. And there's people every year that come out with different caps. Somebody in New Zealand or Australia came out with this thing last year called the NyQuil, and it's like that you put onto the can, and it's like a big trigger that can help you get even, because it's very like on off with spray paint, and you have to like really develop what they call can control and learning which ways to put the can to where you want it to kind of spray and make a different line. But every year they come up with different things and different tools to make it just a little bit easier.
I think a lot of people don't realize there's different spray nozzles that
right, and then mostly American spray paint is pretty trash and very high pressure and very limited in colors. Rust-Oleum's the only one, and they've changed their valve system years ago to a male valve system. So all the European caps won't work on them. But then graffiti writers made these like adapters that you can buy. There's a UTech adapter that this guy made. He just 3D prints them, and you put it on the can, and then you can use the European style caps. Because all of these companies that like Molotov is from Germany, Montana Colors is from Spain, Iron Lax from Australia. They're like these huge paint companies with like 250 different colors. And because you can't really mix the colors, you can, but it's a mess to mix from can to can. Mm-hmm. So you have to have like these packs of like blue, dark blue, a little bit lighter blue, a little bit lighter blue, because you can't just like with buckets of paint, you can just mix them together. But it's this whole other system of doing things. And I actually would rather use as much acrylic paint as I can, just because it's safer on me, it's safer on the environment. But there's just something really cool about spray paint and an ease of use that you just can't get it with any other medium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys?
Just out of curiosity, do you do anything in digital work?
I work digitally all the time. Like today I made a t-shirt design that's digital. It just depends on what the outcome is. If it's like a sticker or a t-shirt or a business card or something like that, I'll go digital. But most of the time it's just a sketch for me. I sketch digital all the time. Every day I do my tattoos. I'll draw them out on a picture of the body. I draw my murals out on a picture of the building, but it's just, to me, it's not an end medium. There are people that do that, but I don't think it's as cool. To me, there's something fun about actually painting, and there's something that paint does too, that like each medium, like watercolor, has a completely different experience painting with that than painting with oils or whatever. That I really enjoy that part of it.
Okay, Lynette has one. Archer.
Would you mind talking a little bit about the patterns or the symbols that you use rather than a grid?
Oh yeah, that's like the doodle grid system. It's like I said, it was just like, it's a grid system, just like drawing squares. But when you're up on a wall, if you have a line, you can't tell if this line is that line. You get really confused, which I tried doing that, but it's just a mess. So there's this whole system that I'm not even sure who made it, but it's basically just like chicken scratch or words or whatever on a wall, and then you superimpose your sketch onto that, and then you can tell, like, if you're painting a bird, like this wing is by this letter A, and the eyeball is by that little squiggly mark that looks like this. So it's like being able to tell that, and then it helps you proportion things out way easier than just, not knowing and having to step back or go all the way down a ladder and walk back 20 feet to see what you've just drawn. Everybody asks about that too, and I've had clients who get really nervous when I just start drawing a bunch of squiggles on their wall, and they're like, who the heck did I hire? But it all ends up working out in the end. And it's kind of cool. Sometimes I put like really positive things on there. Like I try to like, and I don't know if that like that energy fuses through in some crazy way or anything, but I've done that a few times too. But most of the time it's like a rush to get through all that crap to the part that I enjoy. And that's just like work. So I'm like just squiggling is nothing and then drawing it on there as fast as I can to do my fills and stuff as fast as I can to get it up there. Cause also I don't like it just because people come by and it's like half finished and they're like, it looks great. And I'm like, it's not even done. It looks like trash, but it's such a public thing. So I like just try to get through that part as soon as possible.
I so appreciate you sharing your evolution as an artist and the determination. So there's not one of us in the room that hasn't sat through 150 railroad cars going by. Tell us a little bit more about how to appreciate the art as we're sitting there watching the train go by.
Yeah, that started in New York in the subway system. Kids would just put up there, and I mean, that was the beginning of American graffiti, where they would just put their names up, and then you could see them travel all through the different boroughs of New York, and then they would be like, oh, that's so-and-so, or oh, that's so-and-so, and there's a term called go in all city, where your name is up all over the city. You've done so much that people can't ignore your sort of alter ego name, and most of railroad graffiti is that. There's a subculture that's like they're called monikers, which is like little hobo marker drawings on them. I don't know if you've seen those. You have to be kind of close to see those, but they're just crazy characters and people that have written their name. A guy named Texicano just passed away. He was a Colossus of Rhodes too, and he drew this little cowboy guy for 50 years, and I can't see. There's not a train that goes by where you don't see one of his designs. And he was a railroad worker, and then he just retired, but he still would go out, and there's something cool about trains that people really like. That's like an American thing, and it's like a history thing, and there's sort of this nostalgia and mystery to it. And then, people paint art on them too, so it's like the mix of those things, which is like this cool mix of nostalgia and culture that people do. But a lot of them, the same time they write their name and they go, oh, people take pictures of it. That's called benching, which started out, that word came from also the subway benches. You would sit on a bench to take pictures of the trains going by, but it's still a term that they use that transferred over to the American railroad system. And you paint a piece in, Salina, Kansas or wherever, and then you get a picture of it that's in Michigan, where a lot of our grain is grown here, and then you paint on a train where they fill it with grain, and then it goes to some bakery in Mexico, and the artist will get a picture of their name on it all the way down there. So it's just kind of this fun thing that a lot of times even I can't read some of them, but a lot of times you can make them out. There are letters in there that you can sort of read it. And then there's a whole thing of like different crews, and then there's people that fight with other crews, and so there's like you can see them crossing out somebody, and they were mad at that person, and there's this whole like drama sort of playing out, while most people are just like, this stupid train, and they're mad, But I'll actually drive to go see them and be like, because you never know who's going to be up there. I've seen like really famous artists in that world, and you're like, holy moly, they're rolling by in Hutchinson, Kansas. Like, what the heck? Yeah.
I would much rather look at art on a train than the gray
hoppers. Yeah.
So you mentioned a second ago how public this work is that you do. Do you have any stories of people confronting you as you're starting a job on a big building or something like that? Or
I'm trying to think of. Most of the time, people, it's more accepted now. I have seen people where they you can tell they kind of get upset at it. There's homeless people. Like I painted in Vegas one time, and this homeless crackhead couple was having an argument the whole day, and he was like, they were both just filthy and and yelling at each other, and obviously on some kind of drug. It was just like, what the heck is happening? That's happened a few times, but most of the time it seems like people love it. And we did have one time here in town, there was an official that would come by this fence that I painted, and he's like one of those measuring your grass and calling the city type people, and he was just super upset. Everybody in the neighborhood was like, honk honk, yeah, that's awesome, thank you, but he was in his little city truck what are they doing? And he came by you can't do that, and we ended up having to paint over one of them, but then the city was like, just go home, dude. Like, come on. Because it's most of the time they're in areas of town that nobody really, like when I painted on Archer's building, which is everybody's favorite mural now, that big bison on Main Street, like I just saw she had a building and we painted it, and like it got icy then, and it was like really hard. It sucked, but it was fun and everybody loves it, now. But like at the time it was, people would drive by and be like, well, what the heck is that guy doing up there? But it's just more of an accepted thing now. I think it's become. And I want to try to turn that sort of enthusiasm and sort of bring it into the art gallery and bring that enthusiasm in there somehow. It's kind of difficult to do, but hopefully.
Just another question off the wall here. Since the Landmark Hotel is being renovated, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is something like that?
A lot of times the historical factor comes in and they can't get funding for it. To me, that seems like a silly argument because murals are older than America. They're older than these buildings. Like, you could put a historical mural on it in a historical way, but a lot of times it grants. Right, right.
Like 60,000 years ago.
But they want it to look like the Landmark looked in, when was it built? 1900, early 1900s, I'm guessing. You could probably do an interior thing. I was just thinking of that the other day because there is a public art grant here in town for things like that, but I think they would go in that loophole and there's so many windows. I don't know where you would even put a mural on there.
Yeah, I was just curious, asked if that would be something.
They're going to probably need like a stone carver because I know Alan Tollickson is a stone carver in Emporia, Kansas, and he goes through and does like renovation stuff where little corner pieces have been busted, and he'll go through and he has this way of like measuring and recreating those pieces in stone. And it does a lot of sculptures and things like that get damaged.
Yeah, that was interesting. I was watching a French network, and they were rebuilding Notre Dame, and they actually had to bring in stone workers.
Gotcha, I can't imagine. That's wild.
Woodworkers, and it was fascinating.
Yeah, I bet.
There's men and women both.
Yeah, that's cool.
Just really quickly, do you have a favorite substrate to work with?
Put the mic up.
Sorry. Do you have a favorite substrate to work with?
No, I like doing different things. It's really fun. Now that I do tattooing, tattooing's more of like an illustrative style, so I don't work so much on that on the side now. On the side now, I'm doing more like landscape style paintings, things like that, more fine art stuff, because it just scratches that itch a little bit different. So it's fun to have different things to work on. When you get bored with one, then you can move on to another thing. It's probably ADHD or something, I don't know, but I like them all, I guess. It's fun to learn new things. Like I want to do sculpting eventually, but it's like trying to convince my wife that we need to move somewhere near a foundry is probably not going to work, but we'll figure it out. There's one in Lawrence.
Well, that kind of leads into my question I was going to have is you've already talked about kind of your transition through your drawing from your early days up until now where you're doing these big billboards. What do you see as like your next medium that you really want to get into? What's anything in mind already for sure?
Sculpting for sure. I want to try and like break into some galleries in bigger cities and different areas that are more known, like Santa Fe is more known for artwork. There's some places in Colorado that I want to go to, but even some of the projects that you and I have worked on, like I wish we could have built those things that I designed for you to build in metal, and he would use his skills in fabrication, and then I would use my skills in painting and design, and we had some really cool ideas for these park benches that were like they were going to have solar LED lighting, and they were a bench, but they were also artwork, and it just like it ended up falling through. But stuff like that's just really cool to me, and just sculpting in general is really cool. I've done a little bit of it, and I can do it like on a small scale, but it's such an undertaking to make like a bronze piece, like out of clay, and then it's a whole other thing. But I'm so involved in tattooing right now and mural painting that I just don't have a lot of time.
I'm interested in this bench idea.
It was really cool, man. I'll show it to you.
Yeah. I like that.
We had a whole workup and everything. We went to talk to different foundations in Wichita about it, and we were pretty close. We were like on the second round and then they ended up giving it to their friends basically. But I haven't driven down there. I'll have to check that out. They made this whole like art district down by where the skate park is, and they were kind of trying to revitalize it. And they had a big grant, like huge grant money to do it. And it's probably underway as we speak. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that looks like that's all the questions we have. Brady, thanks for coming out and doing this.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
asked Brady, I said, hey, I have a crazy idea. You want to do this? I think you'd be good for the first time doing this. And he's like, yeah, all right. Yes. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate
Right
that.
on,
Will you
man.
guys give him a round of applause for us?
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, everyone.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank a few of the people who've helped make That Podcast in Hutch possible. My son Mitchell Probst wrote and recorded the music for the show. Jenny Brigette put together some great graphics and promotional art. And Chris Acker helps overcome my mistakes to produce a great sounding product every episode. That Podcast in Hutch is made possible through a collaboration between the Hutchinson Arts and Culture Collective and Salt City Sound. They're working to bring resources and infrastructure to support art, music, and storytelling in our community. If you have an idea for your own podcast, reach out to them at podcasts@saltcitysound.net. If you enjoy That Podcast in Hutch, be sure to subscribe and share it with all your friends. You can also help support this production by subscribing to thatguyinhutch.substack.com or by emailing me at thatguyinhutch@gmail.com to learn about sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next week.
A Salt City Sound production.